And when you have individuals going around smashing cars, often not taking anything, but just because they think it's cool, we're not going to stand for it, and we're going to continue to heighten the security level that we're going to have to try to bring these people to justice. And then we're also going to have the fire chief touch on fires. There have been people that have lost their life in fires this month, and we really need to reiterate the importance of making sure, number one, that people are not starting fires on vacant city lots, but more importantly, that they are keeping their home safe by following basic fire safety principles. And I want to add, and I'll reiterate this at the end again, I just spoke with Crime Stoppers. We have a significant reward. Crime Stoppers have a significant reward for individuals that give us information on folks that continue to vandalize people's property. And one of the most egregious ones, I mean, the cars are one thing, one of the most egregious ones, and I think one of the stations reported on it, was someone going into a building that was boarded up using tools to take off the boards and then throw chairs and other things into the river because they think it's cool. Well, my hope is that the individuals that are responsible for this will be brought to justice. You have possible names of individuals that are engaging in these activities on a regular basis that the chief will touch on, but 3 arrests were made last night of individuals that were in possession of these types of tools. But the other important point to make about last night with these 3 particular individuals that are persons of interest in terms of some of the havoc that's been wreaked around this city is that police officers had to engage in a foot chase. That is extremely dangerous for officers when they have to engage in a foot chase. We have more officers getting injured and injured, more and more officers getting injured because they have to run in the snow and ice to chase individuals that shouldn't be engaged in activities that are dangerous for our community. So I hope that the community will continue to be outraged about this, but more importantly, that they will give tips to individuals that are going out and creating damage for no reason. Not taking anything, but just because they just want to go smash and they think that it's cool. The chief will talk about our heightened enforcement there, but more importantly, I want him to start off talking about the high-risk seizures that we had this month, particularly as it relates to guns and drugs. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. I will have the specifics of this in a written release shortly after this media availability. I'm without the good Captain Bello today, so it takes me a little while longer without him to put the written material together. So kind of an end of the month summary, and then we will talk about the search warrant the mayor mentioned. So it is the end of January, as well as answering 20,000 calls for service in January. By the way, does anyone realize the Monroe County 911 Center receives upwards of 2,500 calls every day? Interesting factoid, but you know, it does speak to the volumes, and that is countywide. So the Rochester Police Department in January arrested 28 defendants for criminal possession of a weapon. That's 28. 23 of those defendants were held in arraignment. 18 are still in custody. 5 of those folks released with a gun were released with non-monetary conditions. It's also noteworthy that 9 of the 18 had predicate status. Therefore, there was no alternative. Those 9 had to be held by the judge at arraignment. Continuing with guns, so far in January, we've taken 51 crime guns off the street. That's 40 handguns, 11 long guns. Non-fatal shootings, we have had 8 non-fatal shootings in the month of January. Comparing it to last year at this time, we had 18 non-fatal shootings. And again, I remind you, we have our non-fatal shooting unit, which investigates every one of these non-fatal shootings as if it were a homicide. Again, they currently have a 35% clearance rate, which is almost double the national average. Homicides. Tragically, we've had 2 homicides in the past 2 days. It's very early on in both investigations, but I can tell you that neither was an act of random violence. And at this time, both appear to be the result of ongoing disputes, which ended in violence in our community. Search warrants. We've actually done several high-risk search warrants. A high-risk search warrant is defined by a search warrant where we utilize the SWAT team due to a number of factors which makes the warrant high risk. Some of them I cannot speak specifically to. We'll have that information a little later, but they're still working the cases. However, on January 29th, our Special Investigations Section of the Narcotics Squad was working an investigation into drug sales. During the course of the investigation, they were able to draft search warrants. On the 29th, 7 search warrants were executed simultaneously in the city of Rochester as well as the town of Greece. What was seized from all the warrants total, and I will read it again, this will be in a written release a little bit later on. 3.81 pounds of cocaine, 8.96 grams of fentanyl, a loaded 25 caliber handgun, a loaded 9mm handgun, another loaded 9mm handgun, another loaded 9mm handgun, a 5.7mm handgun, another 9mm handgun, a Sig Sauer 9mm handgun, a Smith & Wesson 38 caliber handgun, a Sterling handgun, a Bushmaster rifle, a Cal-Tech 22 caliber rifle with a flash suppressor, which was loaded, an AK-47, which was loaded, various ammunition, body armor, and $177,000 cash. In this, arrested were 9 people. I'm not going to read all their names. They will be available in the written release. All 9 people were charged with various counts of criminal possession of a weapon and felony drug charges. As the mayor mentioned, he was talking about foot chases. It's kind of relevant in a couple different ways. Number one, talking about the folks that were attempting to break into the Radisson last night. As you saw in the media release, we were able to apprehend them. The officers were there doing proactive efforts, monitoring the location, encountered these individuals, found them to be in possession of burglars' tools. Once they were processed, we had to release them on an appearance ticket. But when we first found these individuals, it resulted in a foot chase. That foot chase was a 9-car response for these 3 individuals attempting to break into the Radisson, which we're going to have to see through the court process because, as I said, they were given appearance tickets. Now, that 9 cars isn't tied up for an extremely long period of time, but there's 47 car beats. On any given time, there's 47 officers. This took 9 of them. And then the other I wanted to highlight on is I did have an injured officer last night in a foot chase. So one of my officers was in the area of 158 Maryland Street. He attempted to make a traffic stop of a vehicle. While doing so, the operator and the sole occupant of the vehicle pulled into the driveway on Maryland Street. He exited the vehicle and began to flee. The officer was pursuing on foot, but when vaulting a wrought iron fence, impaled his thigh on the fence. I actually saw it. I have a picture of it. What happened was the fire department had to go and cut the fence to get the officer down, leaving the piece of fence intact in his thigh. You can see in the picture, there's wrought iron fence. It goes in here. It's right here. He was taken to the hospital that way. Other officers responded. Ultimately, the suspect was located. And also, with the suspect, which he discarded, some in the pursuit and then some in the vehicle, we found almost $5,000 in cash. And a large bag of a white powdery substance, which was tested to be positive for cocaine. I'm happy to report the officer went to the hospital, had the fence removed from his leg. He's resting at home. He is expected to return to duty. And thanks to the fire department for responding and taking care of my guy. Finally, we did have inquiries this morning. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm also happy at the end of the month to say that our East End Entertainment District initiative continues. I'm happy to report there have been no incidents of violence in the entertainment district since the inception of this detail. And then, as you saw in the release early this morning, we did have upwards of 10 more vehicles with their windows broken out in the area of East Avenue, University Avenue. I can tell you, since this pattern developed, some of the changes is we began investigating all of these. Well, we assigned detectives to them, which is a first, unprecedented. So even folks that had called 911 to report, officers were going back, recontacting each victim detectives doing neighborhood canvases, trying to locate video evidence, checking our GPS tracking of known offenders. We've had an increased uniform presence in all of these areas for the past few weeks. This weekend, we're going to be partnering with the New York State Police. We're going to be utilizing both uniform and covert resources from the Special Investigations section. Again, unprecedented. Special Investigations is usually my high-level narcotics, but we're going to have them working the car break-ins as well with the state police. We'll be deploying them according to the data that we have based on our temporal and geographic analysis of the pattern. The New York State Police, besides providing manpower, will be providing license plate readers for the detail. Any report of a car that is broken into will generate an officer response instead of going to 311. This will allow us to investigate in real time. Some of the ones this morning, when officers arrived for calls, there was evidence of other cars that it had broken into and folks had not called to report it. I cannot stress enough, if your car is broken into, we need to know about it. We need to investigate it. We need to see if we can do technician work. We need to be able to do the neighborhood canvas. So I appreciate, you're going to work, your car window is broken into. I get it, but we're only going to stop them if we catch them. To catch them, I need data, I need evidence. So I need cooperation from the public. Please let us know. Another example is one of the stolen cars we had from last night that we think was being used in the break-ins. The owner just wants the car back and wouldn't sign paperwork for us to prosecute anyone in the car, which makes it a little difficult for us to then try and stop that car. So please, I'm asking everyone for patience. I'm asking for information. I'm asking for cooperation. I'm deploying yet more resources to this pattern over the weekend, and then we'll reevaluate on Monday. In the meantime, anyone who does have information, I'm asked to please call Crime Stoppers. You can call 911. You can call the Office of the Chief, 7033, or you can call the Officer of the Mayor. They'd be happy to take the information and get it back to us. And that's what I have for January updates at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. So with these, and I know it's unprecedented, but this vandalism and smashing of windows has to be elevated. So this is why our CIS has to investigate this. This is unprecedented. Usually we would not do this, but these are quality of life issues that we just cannot tolerate. So we need to make sure we expand that. The other point I want to make, and one of the things that really just really upsets me, really pisses me off, honestly, is, two of the individuals that were trying to break into the Radisson and wreak havoc downtown, they don't even live in the city of Rochester. 2 or 3 of them don't even live here. But yet they're coming in the middle of downtown, in the middle of our city, to come here and try to wreak havoc on a building that we are working on that is going to be hopefully opening in 2026 and going to be rehabilitated. So, yeah, they got appearance tickets, but I will tell you that we asked the owners of that building, and I know from the city perspective, we will prosecute them and pursue them to the fullest extent of the law, because this isn't the first time that they've probably done this. The cameras, the pictures are out there. They think it's a game. I'm glad that we have them. I'm glad that they know on our radar, and I'm hoping that they will see that we cannot tolerate vandalism in the city of Rochester. But we have to have the community support. Nobody has ESP. There are not enough police officers or people that are in an area to be able to see things individually by themselves. But collectively, if we work together, we can make sure that we address these issues. And 120 East Main Street last night is a prime example of what we've been dealing with over the last 2 months. Individuals acting out in a way to get, clout, to put it online because they think it's cool, but we're not going to tolerate it. And what you saw last night is what we will continue to pursue throughout the rest of the coming weeks to make sure that we bring individuals to justice. And then the last piece, and the chief did say that you will get this in writing, is that individuals that think that they can traffic in drugs and guns in our city know that residents are sick of it and they are not going to tolerate it. A lot of the things that the chief has mentioned are things that came through the mayor's office, the chief's office, the reported app of neighbors, and this is why I love our neighbors, reporting of suspicious incidences that they have seen in their neighborhood. And as a result of that type of cooperation, you saw, and you'll see in the press release, the high level of drugs and guns that we were able to get off the streets. We have workforce development programs that you can call through the Department of Recreation and Human Services. You can call our local workforce development agency, Rochester Works, if you are in need of employment or training. Here at the City of Rochester, we have a reentry program, again, through the Department of Recreation and Human Services. And I think for individuals that think that trafficking in drugs or guns is the way to do it, it's not. It's dangerous, and it can either get you killed or it can get you arrested. And we've seen both of those this week. We've seen both of those this week very, very clearly. And very, very clearly from the press release you'll see and what the chief just reiterated. So we need to make sure that we address those things. I want to turn it over to the fire chief because, as you know, fire safety is extremely important to me. The chief knows how important it is to me. We have had just a couple of fires that could have been preventable, but are dangerous. And luckily, because of the hard work of the fire department, they've stopped the spread. For example, there was someone on a vacant lot in Oscar Street that started a fire. On a vacant lot that could have actually taken down the entire neighborhood had it not been for the quick action of the Rochester Fire Department. So we want to get out there to the community, particularly as we continue to go through the next 2 months, which will be cold, February and March, hopefully to warm up. But this weekend it's not. We have to make sure that you're zeroing in on fire safety. We have had several high-profile fires in the last couple of months that have really that have led to some serious damage to folks and serious injury. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Napolitano to address this.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, everyone. Similar to Chief Smith, we will be providing the data in a media release. So for January 2025, our total requests for services thus far for the month of January are 3,428 runs. That's almost a 200 call increase from the same time last year. Thus far this year, we've had 91 fires, 43 were in structures, 10 were vehicle, and 38 were fires in other capacities, rubbish fires, things of that nature, appliance fires. Our fire investigation unit has investigated 46 fires incidents so far this year. Of the 46, 28 were intentional, 18 were accidental. Obviously, the intentional is something we can't control. We work with our partners at Rochester Police Department in that effort. However, the 18 accidental, as the mayor alluded to, are extremely easy to control. 16 of these fires occurred in vacant structures. Again, these are structures that are secured, boarded, but the security gets removed. And we're asking for people, if you see something, if you see an opening, please contact 911, contact 311, call the fire chief's office. We work with our partners at the Department of Environmental Services and the Neighborhood NBD in order to resecure those properties along with city security. Additionally, we've already responded to 220 motor vehicle accidents this year, several of them being significant with requiring extrication of the patient and other occupants using hydraulic methodologies. So we remain vigilant with the 511 members of the Rochester Fire Department to provide fire safety, but it's incumbent upon individuals to do the right thing. A couple things I just want to touch upon. Candles. If you want to use a candle, that's fantastic. Just don't leave it unattended. There's methodologies to ensure that you're use a plate, keep it next to away from any combustible materials, or even better, use an electronic candle with a artificial flame. The other thing is lithium-ion batteries. We see this all the time. That's your cell phone. Everyone has a lithium-ion battery in their cell phone. If you've got a cordless drill, charging these units, make sure you do not go to bed with your phone on charge in your bed. We've had mattress fires. People burned from the failure of the lithium-ion battery within the phone. Charging in your car. Do the right thing. Be safe, okay? And the other thing, if you do own an electric vehicle, follow the manufacturer's recommendations for charging that vehicle, as well as any tools, things of that nature. And then the last thing I just want to touch on, we currently have 32 recruits in our Recruit Firefighter Training Academy that will be expected to graduate in July, thus bolstering our ranks to keep us at as close as full capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Yeah, the fires are extremely concerning. A lot of them are preventable. We just saw not too far from here. Where was that? Where the whole block just burnt down? It was a cell phone. Ovid. We saw what just happened in Ovid. I mean, that was I think a cell phone charger. So we want to try to prevent these tragedies. We've had so many of them here the last couple of months, not just in Rochester, but across the country and across the region. So we want to make sure that we take care of those. I'm going to open it up for questions in a second, but I also just want to say to the fire department that we are to Margaret Papalio. We lost a long-term fire employee, 57 years. This was going to be her 57th year. Margaret passed away. I gave her the key to the city to celebrate her 55 years 2 years ago. And I remember when I went to, when we were going to have the celebration for 55 years for Margaret, Margaret says, are you coming? Are you going to make me retire? And I said, no, you can work until your last days. And that is what Margaret did. Margaret Papalio worked to her last day, and she just passed away yesterday. So we're all a little sad up here to lose Margaret. She's worked for the city before I was even born. I think Frank Lamb might have been mayor when she was here, but she was a dedicated civilian employee on the fire side, and we're thinking about her and her family. And I know that we'll find ways to continue to honor her memory and to pay tribute to her. But if you want to do a story on somebody that affected a lot of people, never put on a uniform, but affected all the guys in uniform, think about Margaret Papalio, who spent 57 years in the fire department. We're going to miss her, and I'm just glad that we got a chance to thank her for her service while she was alive. She got to see that we appreciated 55 years. Nobody works anywhere for 30 years, let alone 55 years, and she was hitting her 57th year this year. So with that, I will open it up to any questions that you might have. Again, like I said, we'll try to do these public safety briefings. We try to do them at least monthly. And it's the first one for January. You got our last year briefing towards the end of the year, but now we're looking forward. Listen, the numbers are better than they were in January of 24. They're better than they were in January of 23, but we want to keep it that way. We want to keep these numbers on this trajectory, but we can't have this nonsense of just quality of life issues that people think that they can bring into our city. We got to say, no, we're not going to tolerate it, particularly when they're coming from the surrounding area and coming to wreak havoc in Rochester. Like, how dare they? You don't even live here. And I'm not saying that if you live here, you should wreak havoc, but you got a lot of doggone nerve if you're coming from another town to come and wreak havoc in our city, which is what we saw last night with these dudes coming in with the burglar tools. If there weren't laws and rules, I'd bring them here so you all could ask them questions to see why they wanted to do it. But feel free to track them down. You know what their names are. All right, who has questions? Berkeley.
Chief Smith?
Yeah.
Those three guys arrested overnight, do you think they're the same guys responsible for breaking the windows and throwing the chairs out onto the frozen river?
Yeah, possibly, but too soon to say.
What was the red flag about them last night?
So the officers were checking the location, which is fenced in, and these gentlemen were inside the secured fence. They'd cut a hole in the fence, and they were already inside the security area when the officers encountered them.
Do you think that hole is repaired now?
It better be.
We've contacted the owner, and we've contacted our DES crew to make sure that fence is going to be resecured. But I mean, we're not talking about. Has anybody seen the board ups around the city of Rochester? These aren't like you ever play with Legos. These aren't like Lego board ups. These are serious board ups. So the tools that these individuals had are some serious construction tools to be able to get through these things. It's not like you're going to go get the hammer that I keep in my drawer next to the sink and be able to and get any of these board ups, right? You can't go and take the hammer from my son's toolkit and be able to pull these things off. You have to have some serious tools to be able to get these boards off, particularly from commercial buildings. So that tells you what the intent was. These were individuals that had construction-like tools that were going into buildings to try to wreak havoc. And that is what we can't tolerate. And I hope that people will report individuals that continue to try to operate in that manner to really mess your city up. They're trying to mess your city up, our city. That's what we saw last night. And that's what we can't tolerate. And unfortunately, we have an element of our society that says, oh, no, it's okay. They probably had some challenges. No, this was at late in the morning, early in the morning, where they should have been at home relaxing, getting ready for work, but they decided to come and tie up officers' time to destroy a building that we're working on revitalizing. And do God knows whatever else. Maybe smash some windows, but we don't know. Any other questions? You guys speak up.
Oh, sorry. It might be too early to say, but with all the recent car break-ins, are we thinking it's the same people?
Good question. So the question is, for those that can't hear, is it too early to say if it's the same people that are smashing cars? Chief?
As far as identifying possible individuals, I honestly can say we are not there. I can say through the course of these details, on 2 different occasions, patrol officers did encounter stolen vehicles in the area, occupied by 3 to 4 would appear to be teenagers. When the officers attempted to stop these vehicles, they fled away. Our pursuit policy does not include stolen vehicles, therefore they were not pursued. But it would appear to me that we have some teenagers in stolen cars that after they steal the car seem to like go around and smash folks' windows. I mean, most of these are on the street. So, I mean, picture it. It's easy to drive down the street and hit a whole bunch of cars as opposed to go into a parking lot where there's private video, where there's surveillance, where cars are parked next to each other.
And I think the other thing is it's also an opportunity, particularly for anyone that wants to get a reward. So if you got someone in your house or your cousin or your brother, and you know that they are going out late at night because they think that it's cool just to smash people's cars, that's what this is. 99% of the time, they're not taking anything. They're just going just to smash, just for fun. Just for fun, I'm just going to go smash people's windows, which is totally ridiculous and insane, really, when you think about it. But we want people to come forward, and there's reward dollars. If you don't care that people are doing that, maybe a reward from Crime Stoppers, which they have, will entice people to come forward with information that are doing these things. But we will continue to do both covert and overt surveillance of areas where this is happening. Some we will talk about publicly, some we won't. But the ultimate goal is to get this to stop. And this is why we now have to use resources to elevate this to a higher level. But for people who say, oh, it's not a big deal, no, it is a big deal. It's a huge deal. And this is why we're going to take it seriously. Yeah. Yes, 57. This year would have been 57. She was going into her 57th year. And if you go to the fire department's Instagram, you can get a picture of her. But 57 years, think about that. No one stays around that long, especially you guys in reporting. I don't think anybody stays at a station for more than 10 years these days. So that's a long time. Yeah, you guys are like dinosaurs. Yeah.
It's okay, I am too.
I don't know if it's part of a larger crime syndicate. I'll let the chief answer that question. But I do know, once you see the list of all the stuff that came out, there's no question that they've been wreaking havoc on the streets of Rochester. Chief.
Part of a nationwide syndicate? No. A local group of people engaged in an enterprise to bring drugs into Rochester and then sell them? Yes.
We often we haven't talked about our gun trace data report. We now have our NIBAN machine at the public safety building, where we are continuing to try to do the best we can to trace to see where these guns come from. But I mean, to have that level of firepower that the chief talked about, and you'll see in your press release, is just nuts. It's crazy. I mean, it really boggles the mind. And we don't put this out here to scare people, but we want to make people aware that there are individuals that think it's okay to bring in, illegal firearms in Rochester and use them to wreak havoc on places. But these search warrants, but the reason why I also wanted the chief to touch on this is because this is not just a Rochester issue. People always say, "Oh, the city is the city." Well, guess what? Some of these search warrants were also executed in the suburbs. So these problems are just aren't unique to Rochester. And in many instances, some of them originate outside of Rochester. and they bring their stuff here, i.e. the individuals coming here with burglar tools where 2 out of 3 of them aren't even from here. Last question, and then we have to wrap up.
Chief Smith, I know the RPD chase policy is nuanced and it's spelled out in your general orders,
Yes.
but I'm sure in the last 5 years I've seen stolen cars chased by RPD. I can think of stories where I've done that. So why aren't you chasing these guys?
So stolen cars become chaseable if they are endangering officers or the public, basically in a nutshell. So if you have a stolen car that swerves at an officer out on foot, that becomes a reckless endangerment, which ups it. And that was a recent nuance. And it is quite a lengthy policy, but the easy way to keep it in mind is if it's a property crime, we're not going to pursue for property crimes. It has to be a crime that endangers a person, whether that be a police officer or the general public. And then even after that, you know, there are rules of engagements and there's cutoff points where it simply becomes too dangerous. We won't pursue anymore.
The challenge with the chase policy, this is not just the Rochester issue, but somewhere else. As much as we want to get the knuckleheads that we started pursuing the other way, the challenge is that they hit a pedestrian while they're being pursued. And then that pedestrian ends up getting hit or killed, or worse, an RPD person hits a pedestrian. So what we've been talking about is how do we find that happy medium to try to catch them even before they start getting engaged in a pursuit. But that's the challenge, right? Because when you have somebody that might not know how to drive, you already heard the number of automobile accidents that we have. Half of the folks that have driver's licenses shouldn't have them, let alone someone that does not have one. And then they decide to go 100 miles per hour down a residential street that is extremely narrow, and then you have officers pursuing behind them. It raises the risk of actually hitting somebody. Our goal is to try to find that happy medium. Now, a gun is involved or some type of other violent incidences, we have to do what we have to do and do those type of pursuits. Our challenge is where do we find those happy mediums? But the most important thing is we want to prevent this nonsense. All this stuff is preventable if people would just take responsibility for their actions. But I know there are some folks out there that will have excuses as to why people are doing this, but there should be no excuses for this. There's no excuse for taking burglar tools downtown and going to dismantle somebody's private property or property that is going to benefit all of the residents of Rochester. So thank you all for being here. All this stuff will be put out in a release. We hope tomorrow is February 1st. Happy February. We hope to continue the trajectory in terms of decreasing gun violence. We want to be able to do that. And then hopefully our next update at the end of February, February 28th, we'll have good news to report. In this business, there's always good news, there's always bad news, but we like to put it all out there to be transparent, which is what this administration is all about. So with that, thank you, everybody.